Hello everyone, I'm Alex Savage from KTVU Channel 2. I want to welcome you here to a forum of candidates running for one seat on the Bay Area Rapid Transit District Board. The BART Board District 2 includes Antioch, Brentwood, Oakley, Pittsburgh, unincorporated areas in eastern and northern Contra Costa County, and part of Concord. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa Elections Division, Contra Costa Television, the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and the League of Women Voters of West Contra Costa County. We're recording this roundtable here in the studio of Contra Costa Television. The candidates joining us today are Joel Keller. Appreciate you being here.
Good morning.
And Mark Foley.
Good morning.
Thanks so much to both of you. So we drew lots before the show to determine the speaking order today. Joel, we're going to start with you. And I'm sure you'd probably agree. We should start with an issue that BART riders and people across the Bay Area feel is sort of top of mind right now. And that is safety on the system. A lot of people feel that they're riding the train sometimes and they are not safe. They're apprehensive at times. And there have been some high-profile incidents on BART of people being hurt or being victims of crimes. Is enough being done to make BART riders feel safe?
No, and we have to do more. A lot of our riders are feeling discomfort, particularly during the evening and on weekends. And we're losing ridership as a result of that. I have a 35-year career in law enforcement, and I'm committed to doing all that we can to improve the safety and restore the confidence of our riders. We have a special meeting in Pittsburgh on the 27th at 5 o'clock where the staff will present a security and safety plan which will increase the amount of fare evasion teams, and we'll have other components that will allow us to respond to our riders' concerns about safety. So I think it's important that those who are concerned about this issue make their voices heard. The last time we had this hearing in Oakland, there was a lot of concern about not doing anything. I made the motion to do a special meeting in Contra Costa County, and this is the opportunity for people who feel strongly about this issue to come out and let their voices be heard.
Okay. Mark, to you. What more needs to be done to make riders safer?
This is the #1 priority I have in running for this office, is rider safety. I'm a 25-year daily BART rider, so I've seen it firsthand how the BART system has changed. For me, it's visibility and deterrent. I think that the BART board needs to look at making sure that their staff for the police is actually fully funded and has full staff without vacancies. Really, we need to have visibility on platforms, on the trains, in the stations. And I think that it's important to harden our stations as well. Right now, crime is coming from those that are not paying fares, people that are hopping the turnstiles, getting into the stations, and those are the challenges that they're facing. So we need to do what we can to make BART itself a safer environment for folks to ride. And as Joel mentioned, it really is the off hours and the weekends where we need to have a shift in coverage so that we have more visibility of officers in that time.
So what specifically needs to happen to deal with the issue of fare evaders? So we've heard so much about how much money BART is losing because of that particular issue. You think, ground-to-ceiling barriers at the stations, more compliance officers, making sure that people have paid their fare? What steps should be taken in that area?
Well, I don't want to turn BART into the airport. I don't think there should be a TSA sort of event when you go to work every morning. But I do think that there are some common sense approaches to the way that the BART stations will allow people to enter and exit. Certainly, I think raising the entry and exit walls, the spaces that people can come through, does help to deter the people that I see at 12th Street that hop the gate, so to speak, go over the side of the railing. That needs to be blocked so that people can't do that. I think it's making sure that there are station agents at every station and that they're the eyes and ears of BART so that when they do see an issue, they're able to respond to it. I do think that looking at fare evasion on the rides themselves is a little bit more challenging. It opens itself up to some questionable approaches to who do you identify as a fare evader, when do you ask if they're paying their fare, and when do you not. So for me, it's staffing and hardening the stations.
Okay. Joel, to you, I mean, you've been on the board for some time. Do you think enough has been done over the years to address the issue of fare evaders?
Absolutely not.
Why do you say that?
The problem is increasing, and it's gotten to a point where losing $15 to $20 million a year. Right. We have one fare evasion team that checks everyone. I entered the station at Antioch, the new station at Antioch. The fare evasion team was there. I knew the police officer who was supervising the team, and they wanted to see my proof of payment. So they're asking everyone who comes onto the system, without regard to who they are, what they look like, or what their status in society is, everyone needs to be treated the same. This is about proof of payment, not about who you are. And we'll be getting a report. I want to be sure that this is being implemented fairly. At the meeting in Pittsburgh, we'll be getting a report from the chief of police about the statistics and what that looks like. Assuming that it's fairly implemented, I think a second team of fare evasion people will do exactly what Mark would like us to do. There'll be a presence on the train on the weekends and the evenings, which is when it's badly needed, and we'll work to prevent fare evasion during those times.
Let me ask you about the other issue when it comes to safety and security on BART, and that is the number of officers that you have. I'm sure you have heard the complaints before. People say, I don't ever see BART police officers, especially on board trains.
So,
is that a valid complaint?
It is a valid complaint, and I for years have urged the chief and the chief before him to ensure that on each shift, officers make a presence in the stations and on the trains. So we need to look at the realities. We are at the beginning of this year, we were down 40 officers. It's very competitive in the Bay Area. Officers that come out of the academy have lots of options. So we were down 40 officers. The chief has gotten it down to just below 25, and 4 officers have announced their retirement. Also on the agenda on the 27th is the chief has had a report done on the size of the police department. So in addition to the 40 officers that are short, it may turn out after this review is made public that we need additional police officers, because we haven't substantially increased the size of the department since we started service in 1972. So we might end up with not only having a challenge about filling the vacancies, but the chief may announce the need for additional
more officers.
Which is going to be very challenging.
Sure.
But this chief has been very aggressive about recruitment, and the number of vacancies is going down.
To you, Mark, how do you address the officer shortage?
Well, again, I think it is a recruitment and retention issue. We're not competitive, and we are losing good candidates or good officers to other agencies. We want BART to create an opportunity where people feel they can come and actually have a career, rather than simply using it as a springboard to another agency. And so to do that, we have to make sure we're doing the best we can to recruit and retain the best out there in the officer world.
What more can be done to make this a desirable position for someone leaving the academy to have?
Well,
what can you offer?
Well, I think you need to look at where we are relative to other agencies in our benefits package and our pay package. Are we being responsive enough to what the agency needs to be able to recruit those folks that will actually do the best job for us? We may find that we're not. And I know that there's a survey going on when I recently spoke with the BART Peace Officers Association that they are concerned that we are near the bottom, and that they do need to actually look at being able to do a better job of bringing folks on board and keeping them in the position.
And would that be a priority if you join the board? I mean, is that a day one priority for you, addressing the officer shortage?
It is. In fact, that's the first bullet point on my candidate statement, is rider safety, and it includes making sure we're fully staffed as BART should be for safety. I know you mentioned seeing BART officers on board. Thursday, my train was stopped. An officer got on board, looked for an individual, no one to be found, and left. That is the one time I've seen someone this year on the train. So I disagree that we have a good visibility as it is now. As of this point, the safest riders on BART are the criminals.
What else needs to be done aside from hiring more officers, you think, to make people passengers at ease?
So I think there's a lot we can do. One of the things that I urge people to do is use the download the BART Watch app. My wife and I were on the train going to the airport, and there was a disruptive rider around Pleasant Hill. I notified the police by using the BART app. And at Orinda, 3 officers entered the train and removed the disruptive rider from the train. You could just see the tension in that rail car go down. People were upset because of the loud voices. He urinated on the train. So you could see a lot of tension. As soon as the 3 officers arrived, took control of the situation, removed the disruptive rider from the train, the situation was calmed. So I would urge people, we need more eyes and ears on the system. If you see something, say something. And the BART Watch app is anonymous. You can do it quickly, and the police do respond. Even if we were fully staffed, it is unlikely to think that as large as the railroad is always going to be a police officer where there's a problem. The way to solve that is by our riders fully engaging and reporting this to the police and helping us to secure the trains when there are identified problems.
One of the other aspects of security are surveillance cameras, and I mean, a lot was made of the fact that there have been crimes committed, and it turns out that the cameras on board some of those trains weren't actually working and weren't recording. Has that problem been fully addressed?
Yes, 100% of the cameras in our fleet are now operational. Some of the more high-profile crimes that occurred on BART were solved as a result of onboard cameras and station cameras. As you know, we just adopted a privacy ordinance, which will have its second reading in Pittsburgh, which balances the need for privacy between the need for safety and security. I don't favor facial recognition software. One, it's unreliable. It's not been tested in a transit environment, and I think it's invasive. So there are lots of other technology techniques that are available to us, and once we get this ordinance adopted and it goes through the 30-day period, we'll be able to increase the amount of the use of technology in our stations, in our parking lots, and in our parking garages.
What is your thought on facial recognition technology?
I don't support it.
Okay.
I believe that, again, it's a situation where it opens the door to questionable behavior based on what's found. I do support capital improvements in the stations, in the parking garages, within the BART system itself. I think that we should do more to ensure that we are putting in place the infrastructure that's necessary for us to be responsive. We just need to be mindful of where we're focusing our dollars. The riders entrust us with their safety, so we need to make sure that their fare money is put in the right place. And so a part of that would be exploring opportunities in grant funding to harden the stations with cameras, with other ways that we could approach being less invasive but having more eyes on the station.
So from a budgetary standpoint, when you look at how the money's all being spent, what shifts do you believe need to be made? I mean, where is BART spending too much money? Where should cuts be made? Where should more money be spent?
I think you need to look at operational efficiencies. I've been a 25-year employee with East Bay Municipal Utility District. And part of my role there as an analyst in operations and maintenance is to look at reliability of our system, our critical infrastructure. And I would propose that that's the same approach we should take when looking at the BART trains and the BART system itself. If we can gain efficiencies and find opportunities where we're performing maintenance in a way that could be improved, that we look at that as alternatives to take that money and place it elsewhere within the system. I also think we need to make a commitment to our riders that when we're given that capital money to invest in our infrastructure, it stays focused on the infrastructure and not on wages and benefits. I really think it's important that we are focusing that money in an area that improves the daily life of the rider.
Is enough money being spent on infrastructure?
We're making a substantial investment in the infrastructure. The $3.5 billion bond measure was an incredibly good down payment. The voters in Contra, Costa, Alameda, and San Francisco County entrusted us with that money. 80% of the people in San Francisco voted yes, 70% in Alameda County, and in this county, 60% of the taxpayers voted to support BART and the BART board with $3.5 million. Well, we have additional funding that we have to secure. We have a biannual fare increase that by resolution, 100% of that funding goes to capital projects, which has gotten us to a point where we're about 50% fully funded in our capital needs. The big three are what's important: the new rail cars, the new train control, and the Hayward maintenance facility. They aren't fully funded at this time, but because we have local funds, we're able to leverage that money with regional and state and federal funds.
Are we going to start to see more of the new train cars rolling out?
I certainly hope so.
Like,
I saw one.
We see them every once in a while.
Yeah, I saw one. I saw one yesterday on my way home at 19th Street.
Yeah.
It was going to Richmond. Unfortunately, I would have preferred it going to Antioch. Sure. But yeah, they're. It's
going to ramp up, though.
It's going to ramp up. This is such a high priority for us. The BART general manager has weekly phone calls with the president of Bombardier to work out the remaining problems. Now, this is a tricky problem because if we accept the cars with known flaws and we work on them, it invalidates the warranty. So we want to get as many of the cars and as many of the glitches worked out before we accept them and before our teams work on them so that the warranty stays in place. So at some point, we're just going to have the production ramp up and the cars starting coming. And I think once the fleet is converted, I think our riders will be very happy with the new features on the new cars.
Yeah, well, once they're up and running, they're pretty nice to be on. There have been a lot of glitches with the rollout of these new train cars. What do you see as the issue? What would you have done differently in terms of the rollout?
Well, I think part of it would have been doing a little more due diligence in picking our supplier. There's a history of issues with Bombardier as the train car supplier, and I think that if we had done our homework ahead of time, we might not have selected them as the vendor of choice. So I definitely think that when they give us a promise and they're unable to keep it, then they need to be held responsible. I mean, I've been waiting for the fleet of the future for many years, and it still hasn't arrived yet. I'm wondering, as a disappointed rider, when I'm actually going to get the opportunity to ride on one of these cars. Right now, we have an unreliable system. As people have noted, we buy parts on eBay to maintain our existing cars. We need to have been a better planner, thought ahead, and been more proactive with getting these cars replaced in a timely fashion.
All right, we'll switch gears, and so to speak, and talk about another issue of concern to riders, especially in Contra Costa County, and that is the issue of parking, or the lack thereof at stations. I mean, you hear from a lot of folks. I know you hear from them who say, you know, I got to show up at I got to get up pretty early in the morning to get myself a parking space, especially when you're talking about Pittsburgh Bay Point and some of the stations in the eastern part of the county. Let me ask you, is there enough parking for people using the BART system, and how do you address this issue?
No, there isn't. When we opened the Antioch station, the forecast of ridership was 5,600 trips a day. We opened with over 7,000 trips a day, and in September, the average weekday ridership is 8,000 trips a day. So the planners got it wrong, and there's not enough parking. There is parking at the Bliss Avenue Pittsburgh Center Station. There's about 45 spaces there. There's parking up until about 9 a.m. in Pittsburgh Bay Point. And there's parking now at North Concord Martinez, 200 to 400 parking spaces every day, but that's not enough. I've made a commitment to increase the amount of parking at the Antioch station. On the agenda in Pittsburgh.
Where do the new spaces come from?
So if you're familiar with the station, you know there's the station, the parking lot, and there's a maintenance facility. BART owns that 7.5 acres between the existing parking lot and the maintenance facility. We're in the process now, final design, of doing an additional parking of 800 parking spaces. It'll cost about $16.4 million, and we've identified the resources to be able to build that parking lot and deliver 800 additional more parking spaces, which are needed at that station. That too will be on the agenda in Pittsburgh next week for public comment.
This sounds like an important meeting for BART riders to be at. Mark, the issue of parking, it's a struggle. It certainly is. Where do you find more space for people to park?
Well, actually, I am directly involved with the Antioch station as a resident of Antioch. I take it every morning, and I experience the same frustration that everyone else does. I need to be at the station by around 5:30.
Is that the time? Yeah.
To make sure that I have a parking space before I get on the train at 5:45. It was a flawed design, and it was handled poorly when they actually looked at the future needs of that station. There were 2 lots that were identified, the 1,000-space lot which they currently use, and the additional 1,600 spaces on Vieira Avenue. That's the lot that they should have initially developed. That would have given the community the spaces it needs to be able to utilize the system. But of bigger concern about the parking issue is the loss of revenue. I'm concerned that we have people that are not going to Antioch BART, they're going further up the line, or they're choosing not even to commute in using mass transit because parking is unavailable to them. So we made a mistake and we need to fix it.
With that being said, there's also a renewed focus on transit-oriented development, developing housing near BART stations. Makes a lot of sense. How do you balance that with the need for riders to have places to park their cars?
Well, I think it's smart development. When you look at a property that BART's going to convert into, say, a transit village, if you will, you need to do it in a way that allows you to be flexible in the future. So that if you've allotted a certain number of spaces that meets the capacity of that station, you need to do it in a way where you could convert as time allows you to reduce those parking spaces back. So I just think it's smart planning from the beginning to look at alternative uses so that you don't paint yourself into a corner where the ridership will exceed the need of the spaces. So I fully support the idea of doing the transit village and the transit housing. In fact, the bill that's on the governor's desk is something I support.
You support it.
Unlike my
AB
opponent.
2923.
That's correct. Unlike my opponent, do support that.
I'm opposed.
You're opposed to AB 2923. Why is it?
I spent 12.5 years in local government, and the greatest prerogative of mayors and city council members is local land use planning. They know their cities. I would rather have the mayor of Concord and his council, the mayor of Pittsburgh and his council, the mayor of Oakley and his council, the mayor of Brentwood and his council, and the mayor of Antioch and his council make those land use decisions than those decisions being made in a boardroom in Oakland, where people there's more representation for the urban core than the suburban areas.
So it's not you're opposed to transit-oriented development,
not
housing development near BART stations.
Not at all.
You're saying you just want to shift the control to the local
or keep it
entities.
at the local level. And if you look at what we've done in Contra, Costa County, the Pleasant Hill station, without BART board making a decision about what should go in there, is a model TOD development. And we have plans for other development here in the county. The market doesn't support that type of development in Antioch and Pittsburgh right at the moment, but the market will catch up to it. I think we have to do more about affordable housing, and I think it's an important part of what the region should do. But BART is a transit agency. It's not equipped to deal with this emerging problem of homelessness. It's not equipped to deal with planning housing, not only in our property. What Mark failed to mention was AB 2923 also gives the BART board, if it's signed by the governor, authority to do planning within a quarter mile of the BART system. I think we should plan on our own property, but I think it's evasive to the local jurisdictions to go beyond the boundaries of our property.
Okay, well, we'll have to see what decision the governor makes on that. Appreciate both of you answering some really important questions for for BART riders. And we want to now give each of our candidates 90 seconds to make a closing statement here. And we are going to begin with Mark Foley.
Thank you, Alex.
Appreciate it.
I'm honored to be a candidate for BART director. I've been a 39-year resident of Contra, Costa County and a 25-year daily rider of BART. And I've seen firsthand how the BART system has become unsafe, unsanitary, and inefficient. And I think we need some change. As a BART director, I will pledge to ensure that riders are safer. We need to have more officers that are visible at our stations, on our platforms, on our trains. We need to fix Antioch BART. There are issues with parking. There are issues with a lack of a station agent. There's no on-site personnel. We need to correct that. I also believe that we need greater fiscal transparency and greater transparency as an agency. I believe that we need to do what we can to reach out to the riders on a regular basis to really hear what their concerns are and to understand what it is that they need from BART. And lastly, I really think that it's important for us as an agency to be part of the community. I do think it is part of our role to address the affordable housing issue. Part of mass transit, public transportation, is to ensure that people have access to that transit. And so for us, it's a source of revenue and it's a source of housing that is much needed in the Bay Area. So I do support our expansion in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel?
Well, thank you, and I also want to express my appreciation to Joe Cansamilla from the Clerk's Office, Martha Goralka from the League of Women Voters, and Joan Carpenter from the League of Women, and yourself as moderator.
My pleasure.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about BART, an agency that I have a lot of passion about. You've heard that there's a flawed BART to Antioch extension. Well, the ridership as of yesterday noon was 719,765 riders. It doesn't sound like the majority of people who use the system agree with Mark about whether the system is working or not. At this rate, we'll achieve 2 million trips in the first year of the BART to Antioch extension. It's a pretty incredible number. There isn't a credible planner that I know that anticipated that number when we started the planning for this agency. We didn't do this in a vacuum. We created an advisory committee that was made up of representatives from the cities and the county, and it was unanimously determined that this project was deliverable, it would meet the needs of the region, and we could afford it. We could have held out for a classic BART extension like they're doing in the Livermore Valley. Livermore Valley is not likely to see a rail extension from Dublin Pleasant and Livermore until around 2026. And if any of you ride on 580 at any time of the night or day, you know that is needed now. So I just want to thank everyone. Take a look at the system. We will do everything we can to improve safety, security. And let me just put in one final pitch for the evening meeting in Pittsburgh on September 27th at 5 o'clock. It's about safety, it's about parking, and it's about other issues that are important to people in eastern Contra Costa County. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I think there's going to be a lot of people at that meeting. I know, weighing in. I appreciate both of you weighing in today. Thank you so much. This concludes our forum of the candidates running to become a director on the Bay Area Rapid Transit Board. Once again, the candidates are Joel Keller and Mark Foley. For more information on the candidates, you can visit the website votersedge.org, and to view this broadcast online, go to CocoVote, C-O-C-O, vote.us. I'm Alex Savage from KTVU Channel 2. Please don't forget to vote November 6th, and remember the deadline to register to vote is October 22nd. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.